Yeah, I started the webinar, so we're recording.
Yeah.
Steve, I wouldn't be able to get there till after 11. So if you think that that might still work, I'm happy to come along.
Yeah, I have no idea how much time he wants to spend, but if we, give a serious look at all those fields, we might still be there.
Okay, I'll come.
Yeah. Well, strap yourself in for ticks. So I
Oh,
pulled
yeah.
4 off me the last time we went out there.
Uh-oh.
Where would we be meeting, Steve? By the Colby Farm?
On
Road,
Colby
right?
Farm Lane, right, there's a split rail fence right at the end of the new development where the trail goes into the field.
Yeah.
So we'll be, that's, if you don't,
Where
probably
we
won't.
went the other day, a couple weeks ago, to look at the bridge by
Well,
the trail.
No, it's right, it's, where the new houses are.
Yeah.
Well, it's right there, just past them. There's a new split rail fence and a trail that goes past the development out into the field.
Okay, I'll find you. I'll come by, and if you're gone, that's what. Oh well.
Would you say it's probably like a few hundred feet in off of Colby Farm Lane, like maybe 500 feet in off of Colby Farm Lane on the left?
Maybe not even that much.
Yeah.
Right after it, because I have some workers coming, but after that, they probably going to cancel anyway. Everybody seems to. After that, I might be able to. So you're saying it's right by where the new houses are on the left.
Just at the far end of it, there's a new split rail fence. When you see that, that's the trail into the property.
Okay.
Hello, Daniel.
Hello,
Brett.
how you doing?
Hi, Paul.
Hi, how are you?
I don't know why. Oh, that's
We
where
have a pretty good sized crowd.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let me get my thing stretched. All right. And let's bring this meeting to order. This is the June 15th, 2021 Newburyport Conservation Commission meeting taking place on the Zoom platform, and this meeting is being recorded. First item on the agenda are the minutes from June 1st, 2021. Do we have any changes, corrections? I'm hearing none.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, roll call. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right. Next item, we are going to skip the Plum Island updates to the end. And we're gonna give 15 minutes to Evergreen Commons, the cottages at Port Place, to discuss what we need to discuss.
Okay, so I'm going to promote Lisa Mead to a panelist, as well as anyone else is here, Steve Sawyer. And I'm not seeing Tom Hughes yet. Could be that he's just not here yet. But Lisa and Steve, you can speak to this.
I believe Tom's, I just got it, Tom's logging on right now.
Okay, great.
Which is great because he's the lead actor tonight.
Yes, yeah, he prepared this memo
Yes.
that we have in front of us, and I'm hoping he will be able to run through it pretty briefly, because I know there's a lot of content in here, but we have a big agenda, so we really don't want to spend more than 25 minutes. Is that right, Joe?
He's in the attendees, Julie.
Okay. All right, Tom. Okay, what do you need, panelist?
All right, Tom,
And
you got
Tom,
15 minutes.
You can just let me know. I've got the plans. I've got everything you submitted, so you can let me know how you'd like me to scroll through.
But first you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go. All right, good evening. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental. Sorry, I had a little trouble logging in. Okay, so first of all, what we tried to do is respond to the issues within the letter. Some of them are conservation related issues and some are not. Some are more like punch list items for the HOA to work through with the developer. But so with regards to that, what I tried to do is take the comments that were from the letter and try to provide a response to each one. And I don't know if you want me to like go through each response or just if we just want to scroll through. You know, there
Could you-
were. Yep.
Could you focus on the ones that are germane to Conservation Commission
Yeah,
related?
so that's they're in the order that was in the letter that was submitted to the commission. So why don't we just start? So right in front of us we have with regard to grading, site grading. So the grading on the site in some areas is extremely flat. The rough grading was all done with or largely done with GPS guided equipment. It was really pretty accurate, but there's not a lot of tolerance for any kind of errors in that. You know, during finish grading, in most of it's a large site. Most of it actually came out really well. And then where we saw areas of, you know, ponding or any kind of, you know, adjustments needed to be done, we've done those on an ongoing basis. You know, there's elevation control on site. You know, the contractors have taken care, but, you know, keep in mind that we have some areas with long, shallow swales that are, you know, at a 0.5% slope. And Steve Sawyer is also on the meeting, so he could talk about some of those things if you'd like. But moving down, many areas that do not drain. So there were some areas that did not drain. Part of it was a challenge because during review of the project, the city engineer asked that we not install dry wells on the you know, on the site and instead use a long swale to bring the water that's mainly on the eastern side of the property and connect it into the stormwater system rather than infiltrating water closer to the well. So, you know, we've done that, but with a half a percent grade on the on that swale, it's not that difficult for something to interfere with that. My understanding is there's an irrigation control box that slightly interfered with that swale. And I know that the contractor is actually working on fixing one area where there's ponding that we know of. Okay, if we can go on to the next. With regard to water in the basements, again, it has to do with it being a flat site. My understanding is all those issues have been resolved. And you know, it's a matter of getting water into those swales and dealing with a relatively flat site. If we can move on to the next. So with regards to, you know, the roof runoff, we've got the 18-inch strip that was shown on the approved plans. Let's see. Trying to see on, again, with regard to ponding areas on site and whether or not areas are holding water. You know, we inspect the site. I inspect the site personally once a week. And when I notice areas that repeatedly ponding, I put those into the reports and they get addressed by the developer. That hasn't been happening for a while, except that one area that's in a finished part of the project behind, I think it's lots 35 or 37. But and the recent work we've done in the open space has pretty much gotten rid of any long-standing ponding out in the open space as well. So this next comment is about that ponding area, and the developer is looking at at that, and we'll be adjusting the grades to make sure that the ponding water is not within the residential lots. It doesn't, we looked at it over Memorial Day weekend. We had about 3 inches of rain over a course of 3 days. And the day after the rain stopped, there was a small puddled area. And the day after that, it was gone. So it's not a big area, but it is an area where there's some ponding on, right near the bound at the back of the property. It's certainly not as big as was shown on the exhibit that was in the letter to you. With regard to the trees that are planted in those areas, the open space trees, there were 3 species and they range from pine at FAC up, and I can't remember the other 2, but there's one that's FAC and one that's FAC wet. All of them can take brief duration ponding and flooding. You guys are aware we have wetlands with the white pines in them, so I'm not worried about that. And the water's not around long enough to impact them. We can kind of skip past this next one. It was already addressed prior to the letter being received. Same with this one. Same with that one.
When you say that it's been addressed, you mean that the developer is like taken some steps to remedy whatever the complaint
Yeah,
is?
yeah, and in Mr. Brown's letter, he acknowledges that that the dry well that was installed in one area behind one home has resolved those issues, I believe.
All right.
So in the interest of time, I'm just trying to skip by.
Very good.
Let's see. So common areas. So within the common areas, I'm not aware of any remaining ponding areas that hold water for 3 days. There's a couple small areas that when it rains, they will puddle a little bit out in the open space. But it disappears pretty quick. With regard to the grading and slope of the walkways, that's just not a conservation issue. We have made some changes. We do have to meet the AAB standard. It's not feasible to make those access areas meet AAB, but we have provided a change to the path. There is some finished grading needs to happen with that, and that's what that next bullet point's about. Right now, the path has been installed, but it does need to be, the surface needs to be finished, and in that process we'll be making sure that everything complies with the standards we have to comply with. You may recall this was never intended, nor was it approved as an ADA or an AAB path, but as a result of concerns raised by the HOA or a resident, we are addressing the AAB standard. With regard
You
to
are addressing the standard?
the AAB standard, yes. But we did that, if you recall, as a minor revision, included an adjustment in the path route at the northern end of the site. We've provided an accessible entry at that area by, instead of having the Y that came down the hill, we kind of run along the slope. There may need to be some fixing. I don't know what the cross slope requirements of that AAB requirement are, but they'll be met for that area. With regard to the bridge and erosion, I've been inspecting that on a weekly basis. There's no erosion of the stone dust at the interface with the bridge. The way that is there's filter fabric underneath, stone along the side. There's a granite curbing up against the wooden timber, and we expect that in the first year or so after installation that the stone dust will settle a little bit. It has, and when we finish the path surface, that will be brought up. But there's no erosion issue. Certainly nothing of any significance in those areas, and I think the commission saw those areas during the site visit we had not too long ago. Moving on down, with regard to vegetation coverage between the common areas of Route 95, there's a whole bunch loaded into this. We've been reworking the open space. The reseeding is coming along great. The oats, which were a spring additive to the seeding have come in beautifully, and I can see the pollinator seeds are sprouting within and between the oats. And the commission may remember there's a procedure for mowing and things like that in the first year of seeding that are related to establishing that pollinator seed. Once the oats reach a certain height, we'll be mowing that back. Then will erosion control measures be installed to keep soils from washing? We have been installing erosion controls as necessary. You may recall there's no waters of the US on site. There is an isolated wetland that is jurisdictional to the commission that we have essentially recreated. And we also established the 25-foot buffer pretty successfully around that around the same time. So there really has been no major erosion events, and certainly nothing that's affected the isolated wetlands function. And in other places, we do have silt fence installed on site. There's one area south of Rain Garden C where it does need to be installed, and I've called that out in my recent reports, and that will be going in soon. They also are all functioning well. I observed them after rainstorms, and they all drain within the 72-hour by design. They are in need of some maintenance. The mulch is supposed to be refreshed, and that is part of the HOA landscaper contract, I believe. I also do note that in Rain Gardens D and E, I've called out in my reports and communicated to the developer, and I think it's been communicated onto the HOA that there's Phragmites that's popping up in Rain Gardens D and E, and that does need to be tackled ASAP before that comes a larger site-wide issue. I pointed it out first when it was just in Rain Garden D, and the rain gardens were weeded, but not entirely, and some of the Phragmites remained. That really does need to be dealt with very quickly. So with regard to, was the IVW designed to have vegetation? Yes, it was. There was a vegetation plan. It was planted. Cattails have taken over the area, and we visited the site with Julia and Jennifer early on, and I think we all agreed it wasn't feasible to try to get the shrubs to grow in there given the increased hydrology that we had, and it has vegetated very well, and that vegetation should stay there. And no, it should not be cut. With regard to sidewalk issues, that's not really a conservation issue. And, you know, before we close out the project engineer will be making sure that everything was built according to plan. And with regard to trees and shrubs that are dying, we've been evaluating them. One of the attachments that I sent to you was the current state of evaluation out there. And we have some that we're monitoring, some that have been completely replaced already. We did not do a lot of planting last year because of the drought. And some of the stuff that was done during the first year, we did have one person working for the landscape company who was supervising the crews, and some of the trees that were installed during that period were not installed completely properly. So any of those that have died, we have replaced, and anything that you know, that is not doing well, we're monitoring and evaluating, you know, what the next steps on those plants are. But certainly before we come in for a COC, we're certainly going to have to show you that we've got the survivability and we've got all the vegetation in place. The next one is kind of related. There are some trees where the, you know, the holes in the that they were planted in were not exactly per plan, and we've largely replaced a lot of those, but any of the ones that are still surviving, we're just evaluating. The hole size is really important for establishing the plant. Once it's established, the plants really don't rely on that little area around the trunk. It's really, you know, you want the roots to get out into the parent soil and for the trees to survive. So there is a point after which that hole becomes irrelevant. But it is really important in the first couple of years of life, and we've been evaluating those. Again, the plant pits is the same issue. So with regard, this is one where he talks about the root crown being too low. I'm not aware of any that haven't been replaced already where the root crown is too low, but if there are any and he wants to point them out to us, we'd be happy to take a look at them. The only thing where the root crown is intentionally low is the foundation planting of roses, but that's something the landscaper pointed out.
So we're Tom, excuse me, we're
Yep.
gonna need to wrap this up pretty soon.
Yep.
And I'm gonna give Mr. Brown 2 minutes to speak if he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, this is a tough thing to like jump by every, which items to jump and which ones to address. So I think all of these have to do with planting details. Some of the things have been corrected, like the mulch and all that. And others, I'm a little confused as to whether or not the mulch depth is an issue of the HOA landscape maintenance, whether they're putting mulch on top of old mulch or whether, our landscape company claims that they've installed the mulch per plan, I think 3 inches of depth. If we can continue on here. Again, this is all the same thing about planting and all that. And again, the main takeaway is when we come in for a certificate of compliance, we're going to have to demonstrate to you that the plants are healthy and planted as per plan. With regard to cleaning up any dead trees and brush around the site perimeter, I'm not aware of any brush piles that exist that were a result of the development or any trees that were cut down as a result of the development. Certainly nothing of any significance. And if there are dead trees and brush around the site perimeter, they should remain there because it's just part of the ecosystem and it's an open space that's supposed to be in a natural state. If there are areas where people feel that it's a result of construction, we can look at that and see if it should be removed. Construction debris and trash needing to be removed. That's on an ongoing basis. That's something that is pointed out in my SWIP reports and the developer follows up, usually same day, but on picking up things that are included in the report. It's a pretty windy site, so occasionally we do get plastic debris that blows around. Soil piles, dust has not been much of an issue recently since the site is largely stable. Early on, it was a challenge, but we had water that was being applied. We used a number of other methods to try to keep dust under control, but it's no longer really a significant issue on site. Exposed piping, that's one of those punch list issues. So why don't we just wrap up the last thing, the playground subdrainage around the playground. I've looked at that playground after a number of rainstorms and it's not holding water anymore. I've put in there, the response. I know the last issue that was of significance, things like the soil compaction. We've put in the contractor's description of what he did, and soil chemistry. The landscape company has applied some material to try to adjust soil chemistry based on testing done by them. And I've given some additional description. I think given you want to wrap it up, maybe we could just turn it over and you could let the Mr. Brown and anybody else speak and then be happy to answer questions.
Mr. Brown, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. We have a very long agenda tonight and we're already 7 minutes past the initial section.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'll just be very quick. I think that this document outlines things that need to be looked at by the commission as we go through approvals. One statement I would like to make is that the HOA landscaper is not installing, maintaining, or putting bark mulch around the trees, nor will they be taking out Phragmites. It's really the responsibility of the developer to do that. And I would think that the landscape contractor probably doesn't have experience in how it should be extracted in terms of getting its roots out. The presence of Phragmites is concerning to me for our project in the future, and it needs to be done by someone who really knows how to remove it. With regard to drainage between lots 36 and 37, the drainage problem occurred before the irrigation was installed. It continues to occur. And I don't want to go through every item here, and I will not do that, but I will tell you that the ADA issues are a major concern that I have and the HOA has on the development. I had a meeting with William Joyce, who's the executive director of the Massachusetts Architectural Board in 2020 to specifically go over this project with regard to walkways and ADA access. And basically what he said
Mr.
is
Brown,
that,
I'm gonna stop you there because that's not really a conservation issue.
okay,
It's probably more of a planning board issue. So I think you should take it up with them.
with them, okay. So I think that we need to discuss all these issues that are contained within Mr. Hughes' letter and our letter. The commission needs to be aware of it and should be considered as you go through the approval process for the project. I don't think that we're going to sit here and talk about and discuss each item one by one and come to a resolution, but it's really information for the commission to evaluate as you go through the process of approving the project.
Yeah, we
Thank
will
you.
certainly do that.
And I'd like to thank you for submitting all those comments, because we do have to go through a process of making sure everything was done correctly before the certificate of compliance is issued. And your list of concerns helps us sort of hit a lot of these points with the applicant or the developer before the project is complete. So we'll be going through all of this again with them and doing a complete site visit prior to the certificate of compliance. And again, this is helpful, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right,
Can I
thank you.
make one comment before we?
Yeah.
Tom, I was out there this afternoon, took a walk around,
Yep,
and on that hillside where I guess where people were sliding last winter,
yeah,
there's some fresh erosion of the path, and the stone dust is making its way down towards the wetland.
right.
And I
So,
suspect that after the rain we just had, it's even worse.
yeah, so that is going out, it's actually going into a stone area that is just up from the stormwater wetland near the plunge pool.
Yeah.
That is an area where we're looking at a retrofit right there. And if you look, we actually, if you can see to the right of that, there's a low area with stone, which we have put to trap anything washing from the hill. That's something we're aware of, and we're looking to retrofit that, likely with a little bit of a stone pocket on the left, a pipe under the path, and then another stone pocket on the right. Basically taking the water where it collects and currently runs over the path and trying to get it under the path. But that's something we're aware of, and we're looking to fix. A lot of these issues, this is a big site. It's a complex project overall with a lot of parts to it. And we are trying to deal with things on an ongoing basis and trying to move things forward and finish things up. I mean, we're past the rough sandpaper, and we're past maybe the medium sandpaper, but there's still some fine tuning to do in different areas, and this is one of them.
And my other comment is it needs to be resolved quickly. Who's responsible for getting rid of that phragmites?
No, absolutely. I 100% agree. Basically, my understanding is because the O&M plan for the rain gardens requires regular weeding and refreshing of the mulch. And that the O&M, and it really is the lack of weeding that has allowed those things to go from one little small seedling that was initially pointed out into what it is. And the roots and plants do need to be removed. And I'll be talking to the developer, but I'm sure he'll also be talking to the HOA, and somebody does have to deal with it. And it can't get lost in the sort of battle back and forth between the two over that issue. So.
Hey,
Okay.
Tom, what's the schedule for the certificate of compliance? Is that something that's,
So we had talked to Julia earlier on about applying for the house lots that are finished. Originally, we were doing it phase by phase, and we were talking about at least trying to, clear the homeowners' deeds by doing a partial COC for as many of them as are finished and complete and have no issues. But then we have to, we still have a number of things. The conservation restriction is still in process. We do need to do some more planting or some more sort of landscape in areas that are just minor areas, but are still being worked right now. So you're looking at, partial as soon as the commission staff is comfortable with us going forward with the partials on individual lots, and the complete one would follow. I mean, we do have to have survivability of certain plantings and everything. So whether we do a partial for everything and then a final after so many years of, 2 growing seasons of plant survival is something that we'll certainly talk to you guys about how to go forward. I don't have an actual date by which we'll be filing the final COC.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Tom, though, a final COC, according to the order of conditions, has to be filed before a certificate of occupancy for the final house.
Okay, so in which case it would be, we would file for a final COC, but we would work out something for any kind of survivability issues on the plants with the commission. I think
Maybe it's just a perpetual condition or something like that, but there has to,
right.
there
Well,
can't we can't end this with partial certificates.
right. I believe the last house is currently scheduled, and I think Lisa is on the meeting. I think it's December.
The end of
So-
the year, right? So we could, Julia, right? I think that's what we talked about before, is doing all the partials on the homes to get those done and cleaned up for all of the reasons we talked about, and then doing a final with the continuing condition relative to survivability.
Okay, but at this point, are you still interested in doing a partial at all? Or why wouldn't you just wait and do one complete certificate of compliance at the end of the day that would cover everything?
We'll do however you want to handle it, Julia.
Yeah,
It's fine.
okay.
It's fine with us.
Doing the final in December seems a little,
Well, I said bye. I mean, basically, we have some stuff to do. That'll be some landscape to be done, which will happen in September. And then probably while that is going on, we'll be putting together our information, beginning the process and scheduling site visits with the commission and going through that. So we'll begin it before December, but I think we need to get the COC in December. Is that right, Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we got anything else?
There's also the expiration of the order that needs to be looked at again as well.
Well, we have the we have the
The
governor's
extension, when does that take it to again?
well, it would be
Six-
yeah, it's next year, like
Yeah.
2
Yeah,
years
next-
beyond, right?
13 months from like
Yeah.
last February. So yeah, okay.
It's gonna be 13 months, so next July.
Right, but now that we have an end of the thing, we can actually calculate the actual expiration date, so we all have
Yeah.
that.
All right.
So
Sounds,
we'll take care of that.
But it takes us through the year.
yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next item is Jonathan Miller, 8/10/12/18 Colby Farm Lane, request for minor modification.
Okay, so now we need, see who's here for the Jonathan Miller. I'm going to promote you to a panelist so that you can speak to this minor modification.
Matt Hammer, also, I don't know if
And-
Matt
and
Hammer's.
Jonathan, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, is Matt Hammer with you on this?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring him over as well.
I apologize.
Okay.
They have all this stuff to go through.
Can you mute
It's
William Brown,
we're gonna
please?
be there for 2 or 3 hours.
Yep,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Julia and
yes,
and-
thank you.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Matt Hammer with Lamplex Engineering out of Lowell. So we're here this evening requesting an insignificant change to the order of conditions, which was issued for DEP file number 051-1031. And I could share my screen or
Actually, you
do-
can't share your screen, but I can share this. Is this the plan that you want to focus on?
That's perfect. Yep.
Okay.
So the change that we're requesting from the board is for 10, what is called 10 Colby Farm Lane. And as you may recall, this lot, which is also called Lot 1, was part of an overall open space residential subdivision that the commission approved through an order of conditions. And this was a standalone parcel that was separate from the overall open space residential subdivision. So this individual parcel is a single family dwelling. In the addition that deviates from the original approved plan is the addition of a sunroom off the back, which is 12 feet by 12 feet, as well as a proposed deck off the back. And I'd like to note that those items that are extending off of the dwelling will be on sonotubes that will be at grade and not a full foundation to the initial dwelling that's originally proposed. So we've added the sunroom, the deck, in a stairwell off the back of the structure that deviates from the original plan that the commission approved.
And if you all remember when you originally approved this subdivision, this lot over here that is separated from the other units, which are, this is, I believe, the only single family unit in the development possibly.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, and this one is the one that's also closest to the wetland line. And we had them change the lot lines to get it out of the 25-foot no disturb. And then also put a fence, and they've committed to putting signage on the fence to say that beyond this is the conservation area and wetlands, protected wetlands. So, and then the rest of the backyard was allowed to be landscaped and lawn. So this new deck area and proposed sunroom would be over what was to be existing lawn anyway. So it's not as though there's any new disturbance of buffer zone or wetland area.
Correct. And I would like to add to that, Julia, that proposed work is still outside of that 25-foot no disturb zone.
Yep.
Yep.
Which is why you shifted it to this side of the back of the house, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, roll call. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshaw,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola.
Yeah.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank
care.
you.
Julie, is William Brown still promoted to the?
No, I actually never promoted him, so he's not.
Okay,
Um,
I just see him in my
oh, do you?
my list of
Yeah.
people.
Oh, let's see. He's not in my list, so. I'm
I
not
just
sure.
see him on the in all the picture area, but that's okay.
Okay,
All right, next item is Klaus and Sue Kager. I know I butchered that. 19 Francis Drive, request for minor modification.
okay. Okay, Francis and Sue. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. It's Kager or Kajer. If you are here to represent this minor modification, please raise your hand and I will promote you to a panelist. This was prepared by Mary Rimmer and on behalf of the chairs. So I'm not sure. I don't see Mary here and I'm not sure if anyone else is here as well, but I'm happy to represent the project after having spoken with them and corresponded with them by email about it. It is, if I can open up the their plan. As you might remember, this was back in 2020. This project was permitted. It is a single family home on Francis Drive, and there's a wetland in the backyard, which you can see here by these wetland flags. This is to the back of the house. And then there's the buffer zone that I believe is the 25-foot no disturb zone with the dashed line. And the whole backyard was, well, this area of the backyard anyway, was sort of grass and weeds and sort of compacted soil. The tree line is further back here towards where the fence is. And so what they proposed was a deck. They already had a stairway to the basement that they, or a bulkhead that they wanted to put stairs. They proposed this deck and a bunch of mitigation plantings within the buffer zone, which was approved. And the deck was a multi-level deck. So part of it was to be elevated at one level, and then there would be steps down and you'd go down to another level of a deck. They have changed their mind about that, and they'd like to eliminate the lower portion of the deck and instead just make it a patio at grade. So really the only change is going from an elevated deck to an at-grade patio within the exact same footprint in the same buffer zone with the same mitigation as before. So that's why it's a minor modification. But I wanted them to come before you with it because it wasn't, it wasn't just like changing the orientation of the stairs. It was going from a deck to a patio, and so I figured a minor mod would be appropriate in this case. Again, nothing else is changing with regard to mitigation or drainage or impacts to the wetland.
No issues with any of the percent of the lot vegetated and so forth?
No, not on this one. And this is because it's not on Plum Island, we don't have those types of rules, but you're right. I mean, to ask, there's the existing condition of this entire area where the deck was to go was already very sparsely, it's very shady and there are a bunch of big pine trees. So it's very sparsely vegetated in that area. Just really some compacted soil and some lawn grasses and weeds and things like that. So by changing this from a deck to a patio, they're not having any additional impact on any vegetation that might have been in the area. The footprint isn't changing at all.
Is this patio going to be impervious pavers or what?
That is not, they did not give us information on the materials that they're going to use for the patio. I'm not sure if it's impervious or pervious.
No.
That's a good question. But as it's a single family home, stormwater management standards don't apply to this type of a improvement. So I mean, I'm assuming that it would be overland flow towards the wetland in either case.
Right. Okay.
I remember when we talked about this one, wasn't there a couple trees in the corner that we were asking them to not
Yes,
cut down? And would a at-grade deck impact those root systems if we did tell them to keep them, or did it matter? Any thoughts on that?
my assumption would be that it wouldn't have any impact whatsoever because you'd have construction for the deck, shading underneath the deck, which wasn't even really elevated very high up off the ground anyway. So it's not as though anything could grow under there, but I wouldn't think that you'd have much more. I mean, maybe they have to dig a little bit to create a foundation for the patio with like a sub base or something. But I don't see how that would have a significant impact on any of those large trees. But if you'd like, we can continue this and I can see if they can show up at the next meeting or get you that information.
Yeah, I think I'd like to continue it and then, and maybe ask them, what material they're going to use and,
Yep.
and say we would prefer pervious.
Yep.
If there's a choice.
Sure.
Yeah, if we can get some pictures of the backyard too, that
Yeah,
would be quite useful.
Okay, I will get back to Mary and to the applicant and let them know that we continued to, it would be the July 6th meeting. And we'd like someone to attend to answer these questions if they can't get it, and to get us some additional information ahead of time.
Can somebody help me? I can't think of where Francis Drive is. What area of Newburyport are we talking about?
Yeah, it's sort of off of, in the neighborhoods off of Turkey Hill, kind of back down there. I'd have to pull up a map to show you directly.
That's okay. I
But
just wanted to know what area.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's down there.
Okay.
Motion to continue to July 6th.
Second,
Roll call, Paul Healy,
yes,
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, next item is Louisa Tanner and John Watkins, 260 Northern Boulevard, request for determination.
Okay,
Good evening.
sorry.
Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting. At the last hearing, we went over the project details, and from what I recall, with regard to the actual work on the ground, there were really no major concerns of the commission. I want to make sure that's the case. And then there was some questions and a little confusion in interpreting the appraiser's report that we submitted, and we have followed up with some clarification on that matter. And once I'm sure that you don't have any questions about the actual on the ground portion of the project, I'd like to turn it over to Lisa Mead, who's here to go over the appraiser's information with you guys.
Yeah, I don't think I had any
no,
questions regarding that.
Okay, so if we can turn it over to Lisa and she can kind of go through that aspect of the project filing.
Thank you, members of the commission. For the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street in Newburyport. And besides Tom here, Louisa Tanner and Jack Watkins are also on this evening. So I know that the commission has some questions about the appraiser's report, and then we had two follow-up correspondences from Greg Story that we provided to the commission. But if I could, I'd like to walk through his report a little bit with you and then have a conversation depending on where you want to go from there. What I want to remind the board is that, or the commission is that, this is a unique property on Plum Island because it includes two buildings, which are referred to in appraiser's language as improvements. Okay, so that's when they look at a piece of property and has a building on it, they call it an improvement. So it includes two buildings. So the other added complication is that for the purposes of this calculation, the commission, not just the commission, FEMA does the same thing, but you just have to look at the value of the building upon which the work is going to be completed. So those two factors complicate and make it a more complicated appraisal for any appraiser to do the work. But so the way that Greg did this was, first of all, of course, you have to find comps. And as he said in his report, there are no comps on Plum Island that are two individual buildings on one lot. So he went through his whole analysis. So the first thing that he did was, and of course, these are the standards that under appraising standards, is that he looked at the assessor's card and he determined what percentage of the value of the full assessment was assessed to the buildings, okay? And under the assessor's calculations, 59.9 or 60% of the value of the assessment is attributed to buildings. And so when he's looking at his appraisal as a structure or property overall, when he looks at comps, he breaks down all the comps and this based upon that 60% value. He does a similar calculation for other buildings. So first of all, he looks at this as a value overall, and then he placed a 60% value on the buildings. So the total value pre-renovation was $980,000. That was his underlying appraisal that was attached, the first part of the appraisal that was attached to the submission to the board. So then what he has to do is look at and determine from an appraisal point of view, what percentage of that value is attributed to this building, right? So there's 2 buildings on the property. What percentage of that value is attributed to this building? And he determined that because based upon square footage, it was 74.9%. So 74.9% or 75% of the total building value on this site is attributed to this building that's going to have renovation added onto it. So pre-renovation, that value is $416,000 on this building. So he applies the same methodology after the renovations. And let me remind you of, so excuse me, I want to make one correction. His original appraisal applied 70.7% to this building because of the square footage. When the square footage goes up, the percentage of value of the buildings overall is increased in this building. So it went from 70% to 74.9%. Let me remind you that the total additional square footage on this structure is 474 square feet, of which 111 is attributed to the stairwell. So we currently have a spiral staircase, and it's going to be replaced with a standard code compliant staircase. And I think one of the ways that you can look at this, Tom and I were talking about this earlier, and one of the ways you can think about the value increasing or decreasing is that if you have a new kitchen, somebody buys a house and they have a fairly decent kitchen, but they don't like the kitchen and they replace it and it's cost them a lot of money to replace it. The value of that house, so that structure, doesn't necessarily improve by the same amount of money that you spent on that kitchen. The fair market value doesn't increase on a dollar for dollar value of how you improve the kitchen. So we're looking at 274 square feet with 111 square feet attributed to the stairwell. There is an additional bathroom for sure added to the master bedroom, but as Greg says in his second memo to you, that the master bedroom was in pretty good shape to begin with. So there's not a huge jump in value in the improvements in the master bedroom. You certainly get a value, you get a bump because of the bathroom that's being added, but you don't see a huge jump otherwise. Additionally, on the first floor where there's no new square footage added, right? A new bedroom is created by dividing a room. There's no question about that. And so a new bedroom does add some increase in value, but you don't get any new square footage. So that's offset. So his total renovation value of the whole property, right, of the whole property is $1,050,000. That's the total renovation value of the entire property. And then he has to break that down just like he did the earlier valuation, the original valuation, what 60% of that's attributable to the buildings. And then of that 60%, 74.9% now, because of the increase in square footage, is attributed to the renovated structure, which gets it up to 472. Greg Story is a appraiser who works all over the state of Massachusetts. He appears as an expert appraiser on a number of civil cases involving single family homes, divorce properties, interesting estates. He is an expert appraiser to a number of municipalities on takings. He has been cited in Lawyers Weekly over the last 4 years on numerous occasions as being a leading expert at determining valuations on single-family home and complicated properties. So we're pretty confident in the work that he's done. And I think that the hard thing about this particular renovation is that, you know, Louisa and Jack are being upfront about the work that they're doing on this house. You know, they're not trying to show you that they're, you know, not putting in the roof that they're putting in or putting in a particular kind of window. But that all of that doesn't go necessarily to the fair market value of the property. And so I'm hopeful that that explanation will give the board some comfort in knowing that this was done in a very, you know, acceptable appraisal manner. And it's a unique property, and the calculations that Greg did were appropriate. And the total valuation over the original valuation is appropriate given the actual increase in square footage and an increase in usable space in the building.
Okay, so
Yeah, I don't question his bona fides for appraising, but this is a unique property. We haven't dealt with anything like this and probably never will. And I would like verification on his valuation. I don't know how long that would take. I don't think it would take all that long, but I need some sort of verification for his process and his final numbers.
I agree. Even the explanation and the example he used about the stairway, a non-compliant stairway being the same value as a compliant one, just didn't ring true.
If I could, I mean, his point is that from an appraisal point of view, it's a stairway. It's replacing a stairway with a new stairway. So, you know, it's like the condition of the bedroom. So you make the bedroom a little better, but it's still a bedroom nonetheless. But I hear what you're saying, David.
Lisa, I also have a problem with the methodology. He did a great job of explaining it, and I do understand his methodology, and it sounds like a legitimate methodology in certain circumstances. I'm sure it works fine, but in this case, we need to look at the value of just the one structure. And what he's done is he's taken the increased market value of the entire property because of this renovation, and he's divided that percentage-wise between the two structures. That alone, to me, is questionable, and I'd like a peer review of the methodology along with all the rest of it.
Sure, I understand that, Julia, but you have to remember that that's the way the property is, right? It's not going to be sold as...
Yes, but we're only looking at the increase in value of the one structure.
No,
and what he did is he took the increase in value of the whole property because of the work on the one structure, and he divided it between the two structures.
But he weighted it, if I could.
But he's weighting, but he, again, weighted it or not weighted, it's an increase in value because of the renovation, but he's dividing it between two structures, one of which it didn't get any work done and we're not looking at.
Okay, if I could.
And it might just be, and again, you know, I'm not an appraiser, but to me, I'd like to see if there's a way to look at just the one structure.
If I could, you have to value the property, right? And he weighted the improved structure appropriately because you can't separate it from an appraisal point of view. It's one property. You can't separate it out. That's the problem. And so I understand what you're saying, but I think if you get another professional appraiser in here, they're going to say the same thing because you can't go around the island and separate them out. It's not how it's done.
That might be the case. And if that's how it's done, that's how it's done. But in this case, I would agree with Joe and David. I don't know how the other commissioners feel.
Well, let me ask a question. So on the pre-renovation, he assigned 60% of the value to the building that's going to be renovated. Is that correct?
No, So, so the 60% of the 980, Steve,
Yeah.
is assessed to both buildings, right? So that's the building value, because
Okay.
that's the breakdown of the assessed value, right, on a percentage basis. And then 70% of that, of the building value, total building value, was assigned to this structure, the
Okay.
structure being renovated.
And then
On
with
the
with the increase in square footage, that became 74 point something.
75%.
Okay. So, and what we're dealing, if he goes over 50% of the value, then we have to raise the building on pile, is that?
Right. And so that's a really interesting point, Steve, right? So even, so let's say if the, let's do the, just as an exercise, right? So the total renovation value is 1,050,000, right? The building value is 630,000. Okay, that's the total building value of that. The total building value pre-renovation is $588,000. Okay, so if you assigned the entire increase in value between $588,000 and $630,000 to this structure, you still wouldn't come close to the 50%.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess the part that makes me have trouble with this is Ms. Tanner mentioned, I believe, I didn't go back into the recording, but she mentioned something about a value of around 200,000 that was going to be put into this. And I know what you said as far as not getting all your money out of it in value, but I mean, we're at a factor of about 4 or 5 as far as you're only getting about a quarter of the value.
David, there's no question about it. And it's because of the kind of renovation that it is. You don't get all of that money back.
Doesn't that seem like quite a percentage?
And so she got, so just so you know, she actually got, hang on a minute, I have this written down. She got quotes between 115 and 200. So there was a pretty big range of quotes for the construction. She has not hired anybody yet.
Well, what if you just did it by the second method? What percentage would that be?
Well, so here's the problem. The assessed value, again, the assessed value includes both buildings together. Both buildings together under the assessed value is $408,000. So if you use Greg's methodology to split it up, then 260 is at 306 and 260A is at 102.
You just lost me there at the end.
Pardon me?
You just lost me there at the end.
So
Just
200, this building pre-renovation, if you use the assessed value, if you use Greg's percentage, right, of what value this is of the two buildings. So they mix the buildings, they don't separate the buildings. The assessed value of the buildings together is $408,000. So you have to separate the buildings, right? That's the point. So if you do the 60%, the 70% separation of the buildings, then this building is worth $306,000 under the assessor's valuation. And the other building on the lot is $102,000 under the assessor's valuation.
Which is why you chose the other method. Yeah.
I mean, we're taking a unique.
Complicated.
Well, I mean, you say it's a unique situation, and I guess the fact that there is such a discrepancy in the value that they get back, for me, means, and I'm not an assessor in any way, shape, or form. So I mean, for me, I'd like to have somebody that does understand it, that could explain this discrepancy to us. I mean, it shouldn't be a problem the way you're describing it, to get someone else to do a peer review.
No, David, it's not, again, I have great confidence in Greg, it's time and more money. That's all. And that's it's time and money to get essentially, he would have to be off by over $270,000. That's not going to happen.
So it's a unique thing and we're probably never going to run across it again. And in order to bring the post renovation value up by several $100,000 in order to go over the 50%, I just don't think that's going to happen. So I would not be in favor of having a peer review, but if everybody else wants to, that's fine. I don't think it's.
I think I would tend to agree with Steve on this one. I can't really follow all of these numbers that are being thrown around, but I do have the feeling that no matter how we slice or dice it, it's going to come in less than 50%. And we may not, we may not like it, but that's the way it is.
Lisa, do you have any idea how much it would cost and how long it would take to get another review, to get a peer review?
Well, it's probably going to cost between $3,000 and $4,000. And I would just guess, given the work that I do, it's going to take a while because these people, aren't around and they're really busy given the real estate market. And not everybody's going to be able to do this job. Like a regular bank appraisal will not be able to do this job. It's going to have to be somebody who's got pretty significant experience. That's why we went with who we went with.
Yeah, I'm not looking for this to be extra work either. I'm just looking for somebody that has a better background in this to just agree with this. I'm not looking for somebody to start, even if it's just reviewing the methodology of this.
Yeah, I guess the hardest thing I have to understand is why part of the increased value of this new house, part of that cost is being lumped onto the other structure. I understand you say that it's all one property, but I believe that most of the ordinance and regulations, et cetera, refer to structure, not property.
When you, Mr. Healy, when you do an appraisal like this, right, you have to include, like, if you do a comp, right, or you're doing an appraisal for a bank, you appraise the entire property, including the structures. You don't separate out the structures. And so when you go to get your comps, you have to understand how you have to be able to pull those structures out of the total value, right? So, for example, a comp that has a water view, right, may be different than a comp that from a structure point of view or a land point of view may be different from a comp that's in the middle of the island, right? So you add on top of that the two structures on the lot, and you've got to figure out a way to apply a value to each of them that meets the comps that you are looking at. That's part of it.
But why does the value of this secondary house change at all?
Because the entire value of the property is increased by the improvement of one of the structures.
But we're not allowed to look at the entire, we're only looking at the one structure, and Paul's right. You've attributed some of the increase in value of that structure to the other one. And
I understand that.
It just, that's what was done. And it doesn't meet the way our regs are written and what we're, the entire point of our regs, which is to look at improvements to a single structure and then what that means.
Well, no, actually your regs say what is the pre-construction and the post-construction value, right?
Right.
And on a property like this, you have to run through the same analysis that you have to. And so that's what your regs say. What is pre-construction value and not post-construction value?
No, I understand that. But we just want to look at this anyway.
Dan, Dan, you got any comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's being such a complex property with a complex appraisal. Oh, what are we gonna do? I'm inclined to agree with Steve and Paul. I don't know that a peer review is going to be an efficient or effective, process at this point. And we're not even close to the 50%. So if it's a factor of 10% or 20%, it's still not even going to get there. So.
Yeah.
Ron or Carol?
The only thing I'm wondering is if there's something that Attorney Mead can send us, I mean, short of having somebody else review the property, if there's just some literature or some something to help us understand this process. She said that this valuation expert has been published before and is quite well known in the community. So maybe there's something that would just give us a little bit of better feeling for the process without having to go through another review. I don't know, that's kind of a middle of the road approach, but maybe that would help.
So I've given, you obviously have his CV and everything, and he goes through a significant explanation in his appraisal about how he came up with this, and he goes through that an additional explanation in his post-construction appraisal, and then in the 2 additional letters. So Carol, I don't think there's like I hear what you're saying. It'd be great to say, oh, here's the the last newsletter on this kind of thing. I don't think it exists.
There isn't something regarding the standards that appraisers use that would help us to understand what the process he went through?
I mean, I can certainly ask him to provide to you appraising standards. I don't know that it's going to help.
I do think this is a really unique case. I think that he did go through the standards for appraisals and the different methodologies and why he chose the methodology he chose in his report. And but I just feel like it doesn't jibe with our way our regs want us to look at this, and that's what I'm struggling with.
Julie, if I can just interject a little bit. I mean, this may be, exhibit A of the limits to the regulations. I mean, they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to accommodate every situation, but that's what we have. So we just kind of have to roll with it. I mean, we can't.
Yeah.
We can't rewrite the regulations because we have a situation that doesn't fit within that.
No, and the appraisers' methodologies to choose from, the sort of array of methodologies which they use, don't offer themselves to our process either. So it's an imperfect situation.
Yeah, for me, I think, and I can't evaluate, I don't have an answer for my concern, but if this sets a precedent that would appear down the road to be used in other circumstances, that would be a concern of mine. But what I'm hearing is this is such a unique situation that would not be the case.
I think that there are no other properties like this on Plum Island, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because of that, this has been, obviously an expensive process to go through, but actually, you get real information here, right? So, And I think the other part of this is that's difficult is the kind of construction that it is, right? Within the limited improvements that are being made. So I don't think, Ron, it's going to set a precedent because it doesn't exist anywhere else on Plum Island.
I'm sorry, my internet's a little unstable. I missed that.
And Lisa, this isn't considered a 6C. There's 2 dwellings on this one lot is not something that they can't be divided.
No, it just existed. No, it can't be divided. You'd have to get a variance to do that, and that's not going to happen at all. No, they would even be too small for that. And this existed before the adoption of any of that. So no, it can't happen.
All right, well, I am hearing that the commission is not inclined to ask for another appraisal. So in that case, what do you want to do?
Sounds like a jump ball to me. I haven't heard Carol weigh in, and I haven't really weighed in yet. I heard 2 and 3, maybe? No, 3 and 2.
Mm-hmm. So
I'd just like to say I agree with the idea that any peer review of this may be unlikely to push the appraisal over the 50% rule limit if it were to change it at all. But to me, this change in value and this structure with adding a master suite, a new bathroom, a new deck, 400 and some odd square feet of living space, a renovated first floor, stairs to code, entirely new siding, new windows, new framing, new roof, all that, a full renovation plus bedroom, bathroom, decks, etc. To me, an increase in value of $50,000 for that doesn't make sense to me. And because it's such a complicated appraisal and it's hard to understand the methodology and how that works with our regs, that's why I wanted a peer review, more not necessarily change the end result. And so maybe in that case, it's not worth the time and expense, but to help understand whether or not this appraisal and the way it was done was correct.
Can I just say something? So just a couple things, Julia, so that we're all talking about the same thing. So there's 274 additional square feet, right? And there is a master bedroom right now, but it does not have a bathroom and a closet, and it's getting bigger. So there is a bedroom up there already, and you access it through that spiral staircase, which is going to be replaced. And on the first floor, there will be an additional bedroom, yes, but it's not any additional space, right? It's dividing a room that exists, not even pushing that wall out. It's only merely dividing the room that exists. So I do all the stuff to the exterior. You're correct. I'm not questioning that, right? But I do want to be clear that we're not adding a new bedroom on the second floor. It exists. It's becoming larger and it's getting a bathroom for sure.
Yeah. So can you, are we saying that if somebody has say a 1-bedroom place, it's a large bedroom, and they cut it in half and make 2, that doesn't change the evaluation, the appraised value?
No, I didn't say that. I said what the way Julia was explaining it, I thought what I heard was that I took it as being more grandiose than what it was, right? So I didn't say that. In fact, I think Paul, when I originally commented, was that yes, there's an added bedroom, and it does have added value.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm just thinking from the appraiser's point of view. Does having now 3 bedrooms instead of 2 does that go into their?
Yes, he gives. I'm not going to use the right word here, but he gives credit for certain improvements that add value, but don't take it over the top, right? So
Right.
yes, he gives credit to the added added bedroom for sure, and the added bathroom.
Yeah. And what about the new siding, new roof, whatever.
It doesn't really, I mean, there's some value there, but negligible.
Oh,
Why is it negligible?
Because it's already in good condition. So it's a condition issue. So as he describes it, it's already in good condition. It's just going to be in better condition. It's not like it's falling down and falling off.
Well, I mean, you take the roof, for example. I mean, a roof has somewhat of a finite amount of time that you can get out of it. You're increasing that significantly.
Right, but from fair market value, so I'm not an appraiser, like I'm just gonna be,
No,
you know. but
nor
from a
am
fair
I.
market- I ask him all these questions, right, David? So from a fair market value and appraisal point of view, that is not a significant issue.
Well, I guess in my sense here, and the reason I'm going in this direction is just that I don't have any experience in this, and I'm not looking for somebody to redo the whole thing. All I'm looking for is somebody to check the methodology of this. That's the way I feel.
And that's my, that's my position too.
That's pretty close to what Carol suggested, I think.
Yes, I was trying to figure out if there was some way, short of having a whole new valuation done, to just get somebody to weigh in on what happened, how this was done. Because I don't think any of us nobody's pretending this is
Yeah.
our area of expertise, at least not mine, for sure.
Yeah, that's basically the peer review is get verification that this is a valid method, and because I'm not an appraiser either. And this is a complex setup, and some of the numbers don't make sense to me. And that's my point with wanting someone to look at it. Julie, is the city assessor capable of doing something like that?
That's a good question. I could ask them. I don't think that they do appraisals the way they do assessments, because they're not, but I don't know. I mean,
You may have
Lisa,
some
maybe you know.
insight on who might be able to do this type of review.
There
or
is
just
somebody that the
methodology.
city has used an appraiser in the past for different things, so there are people we could call on, but we would have to pay them, or they would have to be paid.
Well, can we at least get it run by the assessor, the city
Yep.
assessor, and if he has no issues with it, then she, sorry, as if I know these things. Yeah, if you could ask her and just to take a look at it and see whether it makes sense.
Is this something, I'm sorry, but I'm still quite new here. Is this something that would necessarily be paid by the people who are asking for this, or does it ever become our responsibility?
Generally, it's for this, it would be the applicant covering the cost. Yeah. If we can get out of it for little or no money, I'm totally fine with that. But I need some assurances that it's.
Yeah, it seems like we can do that and carry it over to the next meeting. It's not an unreasonable request. If Julia, you think you can just run it by your town folks?
Yeah, I will run it by the assessor's office, but if they say this isn't how we do things, this isn't something that we feel comfortable weighing in on, then, are we waiting 3 weeks just to tell the applicant that we need to continue? I'm not sure if that's the most efficient use of time either. So, I mean, maybe, Lisa, do you have any thoughts about how you'd like to see that go?
Yeah, I'd like you to vote tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I hear what you're saying, and I think maybe Jill and is it Mike in her office? They have to evaluate appraisals that come in as part of abatements. So, they might be able to, it's a different, assessing is different than appraising. But they certainly know how to read appraisals. My issue is, what are they going to give you? And I don't want to be here 6 weeks later. And I have to tell you, I would be shocked if this thing, changed by $230,000, right? It's just not going to do that. And so, and a peer review is a peer review. It's a review of the methodology that was used and whether or not it's an acceptable methodology, right? With acceptable results. So, I suspected Jill, and I think it's Mike, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I suspect that they can take a look at it and review it.
Okay.
Isn't there some way we could have some review of the information or come to some conclusion before the next meeting? Are we allowed to do that under the rules in terms of having it be a public hearing?
Well, I guess I wonder if you could, I don't know what the board wants to do, because, if you issued the determination with the condition that they kind of bless it, that's okay before the issuance of the CO. But if they don't bless it, then you've already issued the determination, right? So.
You wouldn't be meeting the condition under that.
I know, so we'd be back here, I guess is my point. We'd have to redo everything, right?
Right.
Well,
I guess I agree with Lisa, that even if we did have a peer review, I don't think there'd be an increase in value that would get you to the 50%.
Yeah, that's my fear too. And also, I'd just be very surprised if anyone from the City Hall or even a different appraiser would be able to come back and say that, no, the method that this person used is wrong. I just don't see that happening. So
Yeah.
I don't really like the way it's playing out, but it's.
Since it's not marginal, since it's not going to likely change the end result, is it worth it to do this?
Right, yeah.
I mean, if we were looking, them having come out with, it's going to increase it by 40 to 45%, and we thought it was wrong, and then a peer review maybe would change that.
Right, yeah.
We're not even close to that.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it was really close, you'd say, oh, they forgot to look at this.
Well, going back to the other method, Lisa, if you did do it the other method, what percentage would we be at?
Well, I don't, so if it was 306, and the question is, what's the construction, right? I mean, this is part of the problem with the other method too right now. Construction costs are through the roof. That doesn't necessarily go to value, right? A piece of plywood that was, $14 a sheet 2 months ago is $45 a sheet today, right? So, if you use the $115,000 quote, then you're under the 50% at the 306, right? That's the assessed.
What are you at, about 33%? And if you use the higher number, if we took the average, just not for any particular reason, but my curiosity.
Right, so that was, let's call it 200,000, right? That's the higher number. So that would be
right
versus the 306.
So that would be over the 50%.
Yeah.
Right.
See, that's the part that kind of concerns me.
Yeah, but you've got two different but the problem is
I know you have different
and it's the property,
ways.
right?
I was hoping that it wouldn't quite go that way and that we could just let it go with that, but that's the part that gets me.
I have to tell you, if construction costs keep going up, and it doesn't matter for this property, because I think you're gonna see different things happening. It's getting expensive.
Well,
and that will definitely won't go to the value of the house.
Would do what? Couldn't hear you.
Would do what, Lisa?
Oh, it won't go to the value of the house, the increased construction costs on a reno like this.
Well, I think we've gotten to the
So are you
point.
keeping account on where we are as a board? And because if it is going such that it's going to be approved, then maybe we can just make it simpler for ourselves.
It appears we're outnumbered, David.
Yeah, if that's the case, so be it.
So. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we do not do a peer review.
Oh, very good. Okay, I'll second that.
All right, roll call. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes,
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
No,
Ron DeCola,
No.
Carol Wagon,
No.
and I vote no.
So the noes have it?
So the noes have it.
okay, now back to the project. That was just for his motion.
Well, but is it possible to, before we ask the applicant to take on that additional expense, that we see if there's some information we can get from the folks at City Hall and then make a decision, or are we just running out of time here?
So here's what I'd like to do to just get this done. Can we please tomorrow, Julia, ask Mike and Jill?
Yep.
If they can look at this, and if they can't, then, my clients will immediately, pay, you got to hire somebody right away, right? And so that we have a review done by the next time we're here on July 6th.
Yep.
Because I do not, it's really, because with all due respect, and I certainly respect, because it's different and I understand what you're saying, it's not going to change $270,000, right? So you're going to have the same result, but maybe somebody's going to explain the methodology better or say that it was okay. So if we could get it done, either by Jill and Mike, or that says, yep, this is legit, and it is what it is. You've got all of the reports. They can call Greg. He will be available to them. And if not, immediately hire somebody else.
Yeah, that was going to be my point, is that I don't think this should go past the 6th. I wouldn't want to wait until then to decide to do a full peer review. So I will talk to Mike and Jill tomorrow.
But what I'm not understanding is if Julia gets information that would help us, can we make a decision before the 6th, or do we need to wait till the 6th?
You have
No,
to
we
wait
have,
till next
we have to
meeting.
wait till the 6th.
Okay.
We have to officially vote on it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're looking at a continuance to July 6th.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Lisa.
Get a motion?
Motion to continue.
second,
Roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
yes,
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes,
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item is, make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself here. Next item is Lorraine and Michael Riley, 2 Spofford Street, amend order of conditions, and Tom Hughes as asked if this can be continued to the July 6th meeting.
Motion to continue.
wait a minute.
Wait.
Don't we need to open the public hearings?
Are we in, it is public hearings, I'm sorry, I didn't highlight my thing properly.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, before you do that, I just want to point out, we had a notice issue on the abutter notices, which is why we can't actually open this hearing. We just do need to continue it. So that was why my request, but
Motion to open the public hearings.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Do we need to open this first to continue it?
It was properly notified in the newspaper, so you need to open and continue but not discuss.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So
Motion to continue to July 6th?
Second.
roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshaw,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is Jack and Beverly Murphy, 3 Marsh Street, notice of intent.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, this is a request for a substantial improvement, and I'm going to promote Matt Steinell to a panelist so he can walk us through this. At the last meeting, they presented this notice of intent, which is for a proposed addition to the single-family home on Plum Island. And I'll bring up the plans. And this is the new addition. And the commission at the end of the meeting asked if this was a substantial improvement, and we hadn't received that information. It hadn't been requested. So Matt provided the substantial improvement form as well as calculations to show that it's not a more than 25% increase in square footage. So Matt, do you want to go through this?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, Matt Steinell from Millennium Engineering. As Julia explained at the last meeting, I think the board in general had a good understanding as to what was being proposed at the property, but there was a little bit of a gap in our expectation that we were going to provide the board with substantial improvement form. So we were asked to go back and do that. We went back and we worked with the owner, who's a builder. He produced the cost estimate for doing the work. As you can see here, Julie is pulling it up. And his assessment there showed that we were well below the 50% requirement for the substantial improvements, as well as Julia asked us to look at the gross living space calculation, which we provided separately on the actual plan itself. If you want to go back to that, Julia, I can point that out as well, in that upper right-hand corner. So you'll see here that there's a little bit of confusion between what the assessor's record says and what we are providing. And I tried to explain that, but basically the assessor shows the area of the house as being essentially confined to 2 floors. They call it the first floor and the second floor. They don't speak to the main ground level, which we're calling the first floor. And that is a finished living space area there too. So when you add the additional, basement or ground level floor to the overall calculation for interior living space, our number comes up to 2513, whereas the assessor had it at 1788 when you don't include that lower level. If we assume the assessor's numbers, worst case scenario, the total increase in living space is 23.5%. So we're just under the 25%. If you include the ground level floor, which we believe is the correct way it should be handled, then the total increase is actually only 16.8%. So in either scenario, we're under the 25% requirement for the living space increase. As far as other changes, this did go before the zoning board recently, and there was some discussion from the homeowner after the meeting that, in order to make everybody feel a little bit more comfortable with this, although he would love to keep the shed because it provides the additional storage that he has enjoyed all along, he'd be willing to give up the shed. So earlier today, I revised this plan to show on the proposed side that the shed is to be removed. So that additional 189 square feet of shed space, which really doesn't help us on the living space area. We don't need the help. Really doesn't help us on the 50% rule. Again, we don't need the help. But as a general environmental impact to the site, we believe it's an improvement to remove that structure from the property. So he was willing to make that concession there, I think, to make both you folks here more comfortable with the project, as well as the people in the zoning board as well. I think that was pretty much the limit of what the commission had issues with at the last hearing. So I'll answer any questions that the board has.
With the removal of the shed, are they going to plant some appropriate vegetation there instead?
We can do that. I don't think there was any discussion of that, but if the commission wants to make that a condition of any potential approval here, we can ensure that the list comes from the CZM, the plants come from the CZM list of approved plants. Probably similar vegetation as is being proposed to be removed from the right-hand side of the addition area there, kind of those low-lying ground, shrubs or something similar off of that list.
Also, are those the pavers leading to the shed going to be removed?
Well, again, details that we didn't discuss. It was a last-minute change to the plan. I don't see a need for the pavers other than they originally turned towards the entrance to the shed. We could probably, at a minimum, remove a portion of them if you wanted to keep it as a walkway from the driveway area. But the driveway runs along the side of the building there anyways to the backyard. So I think a portion of, if not all of the pavers, can be removed.
Yeah, I think if you at least remove the ones that went over towards the shed, that would be helpful.
I think the reason I'm hesitant to say they're all going to be removed is they lead not only to the entrance to the shed, but they lead to the entrance to the fenced and backyard. So it's, if we remove a portion of them, but he still has it as a walkway to the fence gate, then he may be willing to remove. I can't control the mouse, but essentially from where about the middle of the word pavers is there to the stockade fence would likely remain as a walkway to that gate. And then from about the middle of the word pavers back towards the street could potentially be removed.
Okay.
So we could say something like a portion of the existing pavers that are necessary to lead to the shed, which is to be removed, will be also removed. And the remaining pavers necessary to lead to the backyard and stairs may remain.
Absolutely. And we would be open to that condition, as well as if the board wants it for the record, we could revise the plan as early as tomorrow and have it back into the department so that we'd have it for the complete file.
That would actually be the easiest way to do it. And then it's just in the approved plan.
Right.
Okay. Do we have anything else? Anything from the public? Raise your hand if you want to speak. Seeing none.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Good.
Second.
All right, roll call. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshaw,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, next we have Priscilla Geigas, Mass DCR, North Reservation Terrace, notice of intent.
And for this project, I'm going to promote several people to a panelist: Greg Robbins, Mike Driscoll, David Smith. Is there anyone else representing this project? You can raise your hand, otherwise I think we're good.
Okay.
So for the representatives from DCR and GZA on this project, I have obviously the notice of intent up here on the screen, and you can just, if you'd like to unmute yourselves, and you can let me know how you'd like me to scroll through the application in order to present it to the commission.
Great, thank you, Julia. David Smith here from GZA Geoenvironmental, here representing the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. And I am with Mike Driscoll, who is a project manager at DCR, and also Greg Robbins, who is the Director of Waterways. This project, this notice of intent was filed for the proposed beneficial use of approximately 165,000 cubic yards of sand material as beach nourishment on Plum Island Reservation. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is conducting a maintenance dredging project to remove approximately 290 cubic yards of sandy material from the Newburyport Harbor Federal Navigation Project limits. And under the federal base plan that the Corps is proposing, approximately 125,000 cubic yards of material will be placed on the beach at Plum Island Reservation to protect the inlet's south jetty and the area commonly called the spur, the South Jetty spur that you see in the aerial in front of you on the southwest side of that spur. That's being placed there to prevent flanking due to coastal erosion. Under the federal base plan, the remaining 165,000 cubic yards of material is scheduled to go off or near shore at the two disposal sites off of Salisbury Beach and also off of Plum Island. These are permitted disposal sites. Section 204 of the Water Resource Development Act of 1992 allows for the Army Corps to change the disposal location for the purpose of beneficial use. The city of Newburyport made a request to the Army Corps of Engineers to have a Section 204 study done, an assessment, and it determined that the dredge spoils can be placed. The remaining 165,000 cubic yards can be replaced on Plum Island Reservation. DCR is the non-federal sponsor of the Section 204 beneficial use. And as the Army Corps has all their permits to be able to do their project, which is to place 125,000 cubic yards of material, which includes the methodology and of placement and also the dredging work. And what the non-federal sponsor has to do is be able to secure the state and local permits associated with this work. Julia, if you could turn to the plan.
Okay,
The
sorry,
company.
go ahead. That's it.
Yep, this will do, but actually the drawings are further down. Sheet, page 45. Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, this is an Army Corps of Engineers project, and what they're proposing to do is hydraulically place the material onto the beach. 125,000 cubic yards is that white area sort of to the south and east that flanks that South Jetty spur. The gray hatched area, correct? Yep, is the Section 204 limits, which is the area to the northwest. The Corps will hydraulically pump it onto the beach and place it in the manner as shown on the drawing. The crest height will be brought up to an elevation of 6.8, and that's an NAVD 88 datum. It's approximately 400 feet in width, sort of that rectangular, roughly a rectangular shape of both the Corps limit and also the Section 204. And then it's going to transition down at a 10-to-1 slope going seaward out into the deeper water and also to the north and west to match up with the existing grade. The Corps has dredged the Merrimack River, I believe it's 15 times since the 1960s, and the last time it was done is in 2010. And that material was also a beneficial use, and it was placed with 120,000 yards being brought to Newbury Center, and then also 40,000 yards was brought to Salisbury at that time. So it's a similar beneficial use of that dredge material. Prior to that, it had been dredged back in the 1990s, and it had gone to the nearshore disposal sites. The resource area impacts associated with this placement of material is, let me just bring it up here. We have land under ocean. We have land containing shellfish. We have fish runs, coastal beach, barrier beach, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and a riverfront area. And the square foot of values are as what was presented in the notice of intent. Land under ocean is about 347,200 square feet. That also includes land containing shellfish, fish run. Coastal beach, barrier beach is 45,750 square feet, and then coastal storm flowage and riverfront areas a little over 7,000 square feet. What this does do is, by the placement of this material onto the beach, it eliminates the impacts to the nearshore areas at the two disposal sites, which totals about a little under 173 acres of impact. So by placing this onto the beach, those impacts will not be will be eliminated. This is a project that is time sensitive. We are expediting the permitting as feasible in order to meet the Army Corps' requirements of securing all the permits for the Section 204 before they go out to bid. They are looking to get this on the street this summer, with work to commence over the winter time, within the short window of the time of year restrictions that they have to work with. We have filed an environmental notification form with MEPA. That was done on May 17th. The comments are due, actually was due today, and then we'll be getting a decision on June 25th. In conjunction with that, and in conjunction with the filing of this notice of intent, we've also filed a Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Chapter 91 permit with DEP, and that's in the works as well. And so we're trying to get all the permits in hand by at least June, July timeframe to be able to get back to the Corps with these permits in hand. So this project, in summary, it's placement of suitable compatible dredge material. It's consistent with the Massachusetts Executive Order 181 for barrier beaches, which states dredge material is compatible, that has a compatible grain size, shall be used for beach nourishment if economically feasible. This is also consistent with Mass DEP's guide to beach nourishment, and also consistent with the City of Newburyport's beach management plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Dave?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Excuse me, Dave, I don't quite, could you explain the sequencing of construction? What keeps, how you accomplish this in deep water and so forth?
The construction methods are being, this is a core project. So my understanding is that it'll be hydraulically pumped to this location. There'll be barriers placed around here so it, is able to just stay onto the beach, as what has been done before in the past at these onshore locations. And once the material builds up, there'll be excavators, bulldozers that will be placing it to the template that's shown.
So you're going to build it from the shoreline out? Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe that's going to be the case. Yeah, it makes the most sense.
Okay, so you're going to just keep pumping it, changing the shoreline and pumping it. And then finally, when you get to the end, I guess the part I'm having the most trouble with is what's going to contain all of this, aside from gravity, as far as slumping into the deeper water as you're building it.
Yeah, Dave, I don't, as I mentioned before, it is a core project. We don't have the, details as far as the actual placement. the means and methods, other than just that it's going to be pumped and equipment on the beach will be creating the crest to that elevation and then creating the side slopes.
Would it be okay if I jumped in here?
Yes.
I think it's just helpful to remember that the side slopes are 10-to-1. So this is a really shallow slope. It's not going to be prone to sloughing any more than a natural beach would, because 10-to-1 is generally considered a natural beach slope. Thank you.
Okay. One question I had is, assuming the city puts up that core bag structure, will this go up against that? Will it bury it? What'll happen with that? Or will it be removed?
I don't think it's appropriate for us to speak for the city, but I'm comfortable sharing that I believe it's my understanding that they're in sort of a wait and see mode. That if this project it does move forward on the schedule that they're planning right now, that may not happen. But that by no means is that set in stone, and I'm certainly not a representative of the city, so I couldn't speak more than that.
No, that's what I heard too, but I'm just wondering if it was there, what would happen? I know they gotta put sand over the bags to preserve them too, so I guess we'll find out. We'll wait and see.
So what does that mean, Joe? It's just a question of timing as to which project gets done when?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to depend on if the Army Corps project gets delayed, and it could get delayed, the city will most likely put up the core bag system.
So when is this project, the Army Corps project, scheduled to actually happen?
Sometime in the winter?
Yeah, late fall, somewhere around the September timeframe, if all goes according to plan, and then end mid-February.
So they'll be able to do that during the winter months when there's storms and all that? Doesn't matter?
That's when they have to do it. There's time of year restrictions that require that they only do it during that time frame.
September 1 to May 31st, correct?
Yeah, I think it's actually earlier than that.
I'm sorry, not May. Yeah, April 1st.
Yeah, and I think actually, I think it may even be, if it's in water work still taking place, I think that's bumped even further to February.
Oh.
But it could be April if they're only doing land-based grading at that point.
So I'm sorry if I missed this, but so the whole project is going to take that many months, or that's just the time frame in which it can happen?
That's correct. That's just the window of opportunity for the work to be performed.
Thank you.
So just to the northwest of the end of this project, over where the couple of the walkways come out from the parking lot, there has also been considerable erosion. This plan isn't going to do anything about that? Or
just up to the footprint that's shown on the drawing here.
Okay.
I would expect it would at least slow down that erosion, but I guess we'd find out.
Okay.
I hate to be so negative, but if in fact this is in the process of being done and there is a storm and the material leaves the footprint of the filling, what's this? What can you do about it?
I think that'd be the case if the storm occurs after the project is done too, right? I mean, it's material that's going to be lost. I don't know how the core contracting language is going to be. If a storm happens during construction, I'm sure there's some ability, that the Corps has. I don't know off the top of my, I don't have that information. The
I mean,
project
the
is still in
good-
the development phase as far as the contract bid documents.
In the notice of intent, you mentioned a tow berm, which would be constructed to hold or to sort of attempt to keep the material in place during construction. Can you explain a little bit about how you construct that tow berm, what it is, where it is, how long it's expected to last work for?
I believe if it's like prior jobs, the berm is created from sand.
And it's created around the perimeter at what elevation? I mean, so I'm imagining you're trying to create sort of like a boundary for within which you're gonna pump the sand. But if that boundary is underwater, land underwater, it doesn't seem stable enough if it's just loose sand to serve any purpose.
The idea is to contain it while it's being pumped enough so that the water can escape and the sand will settle out.
So is it like a moving target, this tow berm that it starts?
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what I didn't
Yeah, they're
understand.
gonna have pipes that are gonna be, I imagine that can be extended and taken away. So obviously they don't wanna push sand, 1,000 feet with a bulldozer. They would just pump it with pipes and just place it in these particular areas, almost like you'd do it for hydroseeding or spraying bark mulch in a
Mhm.
in a planted area.
And then once they fill in within a certain area, they move that back and then fill in and then move it back again, kind of thing?
That's correct. Yep, that's my understanding.
Okay, all right, that's helpful.
Yeah, one of these sections shows it doesn't go really that deep. I mean, where the first section is, it's not that much below mean low water. Going west, it starts getting deeper, so it will get a bit more complicated. Corps can do it, right?
They've done it before.
Yeah. It's different than the one in 2010, though. I mean, that was all on an established beach.
True.
Does the report talks a lot about water quality? Is there any consideration given to the sand quality that's being put on the beach? Or any experience what comes out of the bottom of the river?
The Corps did testing back in 2016 of the dredged areas. There was I believe there was like 10 or 12 samples that were done. And then also samples that were done onto the beach for compatibility. And the sand that was tested is about 96% sand that's in the dredge material. So it's compatible sand to the beach.
And I guess it doesn't, sand doesn't hold contaminants like clay would, I guess.
That's correct. Yeah, it's too coarse grain.
Yeah. Okay.
Where's the construction vehicles gonna access the area once they start shaping this and so forth?
Yeah, to the left of the drawing, there's a pathway that leads from the project area out into the parking lot. That's to the east of the boardwalk. They're going to be accessing the equipment through that pathway, and the staging area will be part of that parking lot.
Right now, that pathway has a Moby mat on it and fencing on either side. Is that going to be wide enough for you to get your equipment through, or are you going to need to widen it?
My understanding is the Corps is going to be removing the fencing. They'd be removing the Moby mat. I think the narrowest point there is about 8 feet. It's as wide as 12.
Yeah, so they'll remove the fencing so they can have more space. Will they so they'll widen it essentially?
Enough just so
Yeah.
that they won't damage the fence. Yep.
Okay,
for
and
access,
are they
yeah.
going to put down any other kind of mat to get over that area, or are they just going to drive over the sand?
I believe they're just going to be driving over the sand.
Okay. So there should be some sort of requirement for replanting of any dune grass that gets damaged and destroyed, because it will, I'm sure.
I believe that is all covered under the core permitting.
Crossing the dune, okay.
Yeah, there should be some documentation of the condition of it before construction
Yeah.
so that they can get it back.
I think it's mostly poison ivy in there anyway.
There is some of that. Mhm.
Drive over that.
So we'll need to replant the poison ivy. Okay, what else? We have anything else?
Is this going to be going on 24 hours a day?
I'm not aware of the time frame. I don't know, Greg, do you have any insight on that?
I don't. I only know that we can't control the core. The base plan for this project, the lighter colored area of the placement that you see there, is something that the Corps is doing on their own and without the need for our involvement. We've asked them to do this extra piece, the dark or the gray piece, and that's what we're trying to permit, and that's really the piece of this that we're trying to help the Corps with. And because of how they implement their projects, we don't have a lot of say in it. We try and get what we can, but if we push too hard, the Corps' response is, well, fine, then we'll just do it our way and not your way. And we're trying to avoid that if we can.
Okay. We have anything else?
No.
I have a question about public access real quick during construction, because this is a huge area. It's a huge amount of sand that's getting placed. If you include the sand being placed, the 125,000 cubic yards further to the south. So, and it's going to take a while, I'm guessing. Is there going to be some plan for managing public access, keeping people out essentially, because it might be kind of dangerous? Are you going to put up signage, fencing? What's the plan for that?
Again, this is a core project. It's up to them. I imagine there's part of this work just for sheer public safety. There's going to be, this will be cordoned off, certainly to be in a very active site when the equipment's going to be spreading the sand.
Is there any plan for planting after construction, or trying to get some of this planted, new dune?
I'll take that one. Yes, we've been in discussions with CZM about our intent and our desire to do it and the need to do it. But because of the permitting requirements necessary for this and then for that subsequent work and the speed with which we're trying to permit this project, if we don't have the permits in place, the Corps basically said, we're not going to do your project, so we're going flat out. We haven't addressed it now. But one of the reasons we're not too concerned about that is that if this is built on schedule, which means it'll be done sometime, roughly February, March of 2022, then we wouldn't be doing any substantive plantings until the following fall. So, once we get through this permitting process, and this is correct, we can start to have the discussions that we need to have with not just the permitters, but also with the community about, what needs to get planted, where it needs to get planted, any potential changes to dune access, that sort of thing. It's not something that we wanted to make really quick decisions on. It's something that we wanted to be well thought out. And so that was a big part of why we haven't included it in all of the permits that we're filing for.
I'm just thinking that it might make sense to just throw a condition or two into this order of conditions that specifically allows for DCR, the state applicant, or the city to go in and do planting on this within this area post nourishment of native species, clearly American beach grass and whatnot, So that, because that's pretty simple. So just so you don't have to come back and for a separate permit just to put plants in the ground, even though you might not have the resources or anything lined up to do that type of work now, a condition could go in that would allow it to happen.
If you're comfortable with that, we're certainly not going to object to it. One of the concerns that we had is we didn't feel like we had planned enough about what would be planted, where it would be planted, and how to really answer, the substantive questions that we typically would expect from a Concom. So if, we've worked with you before on these types of things. So if the comfort level that's been developed is acceptable to you to condition it that way, we'd certainly welcome it.
Yeah, I don't know, commissioners, do you feel comfortable with that? They could maybe submit, we could put in a condition that they could, if they submit a planting plan to the commission, that the area could be planted with native vegetation.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Sure.
Easier.
Yep. Let's make the project easier.
And maybe if we can do a final, sometimes you check projects, Julie, at the end to see that actually did what you conditioned it to be done. You can put that in there too.
Yeah, yep.
And at whatever point they can submit a planting plan to Julie for approval.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be required, but if they're not ready to do that, it could be something that is allowable. That way they just don't have to come back and get a separate permit to essentially do the last step in this project.
Yeah, the only concern we would have is that if it's conditioned in such a way that it prevents us from approaching the project the way that we would want to. And I don't think the commission would do that on purpose. It's more sort of the unanticipated consequences of some language. So I would just say, put some forethought into it if you can, and be as general as you can, just because we don't want to put ourselves in a box.
It could be something like, in order to help stabilize the newly placed sand, the applicant may plant American beach grass or other native species as necessary within the order of conditions timeframe.
Yeah, that's something like that would work well. The types of things that we need to consider, this isn't just, oh, we're going to run in and do beach grass. It's the density of the beach grass. It has to be balanced with the ecological impacts to shorebirds. We're looking at, desire to have some woody species in there as well, because it helps, it helps protect the dunes as well as mitigate unwanted crossings, that sort of thing.
I see what you're saying. So you would be anticipating actually putting together a more comprehensive sort of planting program for this whole area. In which case, maybe we do want to wait.
I mean, my only concern is that if it's done now, we don't want to do something that would preclude an appropriate approach later. That is all. If you're comfortable conditioning it that way, we'd certainly accept that, because it's going to save us some effort later. But my only point was I wanted to share some of the competing interests that we need to balance. If we were doing it just to protect the dune, we would want as dense a vegetation mat as possible. If we have to address ecological issues, then we have to sort of change that density in certain spots, and we want to do it right. Is really
right. And there'll need to be pathways eventually designated through these areas as well for the public to reach the new beach. So that'll have to be looked at too. So if something goes in, I understand what you're saying. If a condition goes in related to plantings, it should be as general and as open as possible.
Yeah, we would appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I know. I would. Go ahead, David.
Joe. So far, you haven't got any comments back asking you about planting, or you just haven't gotten the comments back yet?
We had a pre-application meeting with the agencies several weeks ago, and we also had a MIPA scoping meeting. That topic didn't come up at either meeting.
Okay.
I can add that prior to the permit process even beginning, we've had discussions about that with CZM informally, and they would be one of the primary commenters. And I think one of the reasons why we probably haven't heard more is that they understand what our intent is here, and that we are intending to do it. And so they're probably a little less worried about it than they normally might be.
Yeah, I would I would personally love to see something other than beach grass, bushes, and, you know, beach plum and whatever, put in there for habitat purposes and stabilization. So, yeah, if we can be as general as possible, I'm totally good with that.
Yeah, actually,
Well,
as an, I'm sorry, sir.
yeah, no, I was just going to say, given all of this, I wonder if maybe we'd be better served to not include anything in this order of conditions. Because it sounds like somebody could take it the wrong way and just mess everything up. And since you're planning on doing this as a later thing, you're gonna have to file anyway. Just take care of it then.
Would a minor modification,
It could be that, yeah. Yeah.
something?
No,
something-
no, I, from what I'm hearing people say, I'm worried that some agency will get upset. Because
True, it could be done just as an amendment.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
if we put it
something-
in now, they're gonna worry. And that's gonna delay it.
Yeah, that, does that work for you guys?
I think we're comfortable with going as far down the road as the commission is comfortable with. You know, if you conditioned it appropriately to allow it to happen with some leeway, I think we'd be in pretty good shape, because our plan is to work very closely with all the permitting agencies. So I'm not too worried about them. But again, it's what you're comfortable with. You know, what you do, you need to be comfortable with and think is the right thing for your community. And if you want to condition it so that we can do it at some point in the future, we would definitely welcome that.
How about something like this? The applicant may establish native plantings in the project area to help stabilize the dune after nourishment in accordance with a planting plan to be reviewed and approved by the commission.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, that works, Julia. And as Greg had mentioned, this will be a fall planting, so this template, you know, that's going to be placed here over the winter time may not look, you know, in the same footprint or orientation here in the fall. So I
Right.
think a plan that needs to be submitted just prior to planting would be ideal.
Okay.
And would you want to include sand fence as part of that condition?
Yes. Is fencing not included in the application at this point either?
There was some language in there about fencing and plantings.
How about this? The applicant may install sand fencing and establish native plantings in the project area to help stabilize the dune after nourishment in accordance with the planting and fencing plan to be reviewed and approved by the commission.
It works.
Okay. All right, do we have anything else?
Nope.
Okay, anything from the public? You want to comment, raise your hand? I am not seeing anybody raise their hand.
I have one more question though,
Oh, yeah.
before you all close the public hearing, which is that with the last project for the core bags, you know, close the hearing, issued the order of conditions, and then Division of Marine Fisheries, Division of Fisheries and Wildlife came out with this long list of conditions that they wanted us to specifically incorporate in our order, but our order had already been issued. So we had to go back and do that modification. Does it make sense? And I don't know, Greg or Dave, you can tell me if this would be problematic with regard to the MIPA process, or Chapter 91, if we waited to issue the order of conditions and continued this until the final comments come back from Fisheries and Wildlife and the other agencies, so that we can incorporate what they want us to incorporate.
Sure. I mean, we can certainly do that. I think I'm looking actually at the letter that was done for the core rules, and it seems like most of the comments had to do with if any changes were made to the plans that needed to have an updated approval. There was time of year restrictions, which I imagine that's still going to apply to our project. Sand cover on the bags, and then also the ability to have a monitor for piping plovers if it was after the April 1st deadline. Compliance report and as-built, that's something that we're going to be doing anyways.
Yeah, and those were all
Yeah.
sort of things that we either in some way already incorporated into our order of conditions or was easy to put in. But they wanted us to specifically have each of those 7 conditions, even though it was duplicative to some of the ones we already had. They wanted us to put those in our order of conditions, so we had to bring it back and amend it. It's a process thing. It wasn't that big of a deal. We could do it again. I'm just wondering, do you need the order of conditions in order to get the MIPA certificate or the Chapter 91? Or is it something that can wait so that we can just do this one time rather than twice?
We do need it for the Chapter 91 permit. We don't need it for the MIPA certificate. That should be issued on the 25th. So we're trying to hope to be able to submit the MIPA certificate and the order of conditions to Chapter 91 to expedite that review.
Okay. Well, yeah, and our next meeting wouldn't be till July 6th. So it sounds like it helps you if you get the order of conditions first.
It would save a week or two, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And one other reason why we would be interested in that is because the Corps needs us to have our permitting in place based on what they say now, but at least I think very close to in place or as much in place as possible before they will commit to building the additional work when they go out to bid. So the more we have in hand, I think the stronger hand we have for them to continue procurement of the 204 placement in addition to their base plan. So that's one of the reasons why we're going so fast, that we filed kind of out of order. We're working the calendars and the review time periods that are required as much as possible.
Okay, so we can amend later if we need to.
Or we could just put those 7 order conditions in that we think they're going to ask.
You can try.
Yeah.
Well, they
Some of them don't apply.
Some
but-
of them don't apply.
Now we can put the ones in that do apply and just have them sitting there, and if they-
Yeah, we can certainly incorporate the time of year restriction, even though that's already in the notice of intent. We can sort of just make them feel comfortable with it like that.
It didn't make any difference last time. They still wanted it, but I don't suppose saying that this is going to have to be built in accordance with all the other agency comments is fulfilling or not. They probably, based on the last time, they still probably going to want us to do it that way.
No, then we can amend it. It's not a big deal for us.
Yeah, I think amending's the way to go.
Okay.
Minor mod.
All right. Any questions from the public? Mark and Leila, right?
Yep, okay.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
No, hang on, Steve.
Oh.
We have questions for the public.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead. Mark and Leila, right? You want to
Wait a minute.
unmute yourselves?
Sorry, I might have double clicked on them. Yep, they should be, yeah,
Yep, we
yes.
can hear you.
Yes.
Just for the record, I'd like to strongly support moving this along as fast as possible and doing any amendments that are required later, as time is of the essence, as has been demonstrated by both the gentlemen that have spoken tonight.
Okay. All right, anybody else? All right. Get a motion?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we,
To vote to put this thing forward? That was just a motion to close the public hearing. Don't they have to vote?
that's correct. That's how we get to issue an order of conditions.
That means our discussion is closed on it.
Right. Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearings?
So moved.
Can I get it? All right, Paul seconds.
I
All in
think
favor?
we just did that, didn't we?
No, we close it for that, and now we're closing
Got it. Yeah. Okay, got it.
all the public hearings. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, well, let's go to order conditions first.
Okay, so the only order of conditions, wait a minute,
I think we have two, don't we?
we do.
Murphy.
Well, no, we don't have two. We just have, because Marsh Street, 3 Marsh Street, oh,
We have Murphy.
no, 3 Marsh Street was approved. And the special condition was that the applicant shall plant native vegetation in the area where the existing shed is to be removed. And that prior to issuance of the order of conditions, the applicant shall provide a revised plan showing removal of the pavers that are unnecessary, unnecessary pavers leading to the existing shed. I mean, along those lines. Those are the two conditions for that one.
Make a motion to issue that order of conditions.
Second.
Roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, next order of conditions is Priscilla Gagas, Mass DCR, North Reservation Terrace, notice of intent.
And for this one, there were 2 special conditions. The first is that the applicant shall provide documentation of the condition of the pathway from the parking lot to the beach, the access pathway that they're using for construction, from the parking lot to the beach prior to construction, and any damage to dune vegetation associated with this pathway shall be mitigated through replanting of American beach grass in the planting season immediately following construction. Does that sound good?
Mhm.
And the next one is that the applicant may install sand fence and establish native plantings in the project area to help stabilize the dune after nourishment in accordance with a planting and fencing plan to be reviewed and approved by the commission.
Yep.
Motion to issue that order of conditions.
Second.
Second.
All right, roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Ron DeCola,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right. I sent out an email to everybody regarding the installation of 1/10 of a mile marker adopt a trail signs that Jerry Mullins had installed along the Gloria Brownhart bike trail. He did not look for permission or look for a permit. A lot of these are within the buffer, wetlands buffer. Julie and I talked earlier about this, and we came to the conclusion that Jerry should at least remove the signs off of there, off of these posts. He hasn't gotten any, he didn't discuss it with the city at all before he installed these. He discussed it with Coastal Trails Coalition. And I assumed they put them in. I have no idea who put them in. I think we need to discuss the what we want to do with this. Because there's no agreement as to who would get any funds from the advertisements that are supposed to go on these things. And Jerry, in the email he sent, he just basically said it was more convenient for him to get this done now than and then discuss with the city later. So I don't know what I'm all ears for what people think about what we should do. Supposedly he's good with 15 days left in the month. He's going to go and work on the damage that he did by digging up soil and putting it on the roadbed. But you know, he's doing what he wants out there.
Joe, I wonder if the signs, I mean, how many of them were placed within our jurisdiction, and even if they were, I'm not sure. Does that necessarily a violation of regulations?
Well, he installed them on city property, first of all.
Right. No, I understand that, but I'm just trying to dig down into what if it, because that isn't really a Concom concern. He should ask the city. I mean, the city should be saying, you know, you can't just put signs in without getting permission. But is that our jurisdiction?
In part, it is I know way back when Bill DC did a delineation, and he said that the entire roadbed was within jurisdiction. I haven't done a GIS map of that area, but I probably could do that. And definitely say how much of it is within jurisdiction. I'm pretty sure at least 9/10 of a mile is within jurisdiction, because there's streams all over the place there.
I feel like we're not having a lot of luck in establishing control with the situation. I wonder if it might be more powerful. It came from another entity in another way. Maybe
yes, and you're
destruction of property or public, damaging public property, something like that might get us attention a little bit more than we have been able to.
You are segueing into I was going to ask the commission if we wanted to essentially send a letter to the mayor, because Jerry has a signed agreement with the city about working out there. And in that signed agreement, he says he will report or Parker River will report any wetlands violations. He's the one committing the wetlands violations out there. And I know this, the mayor told him to cease all activity. Yet he had these signs installed. So I'm wondering whether the commission should send something to the mayor asking that she void that agreement and do something about this.
Joe, I think that when we went out there and had that visit with Jerry, I remember I think you raised the question about those signs.
I probably did. I can't remember.
I remember, and you said you wanted those taken down.
Oh, no, those, I
Well, he
don't,
wanted to do advertising signs or something.
yeah,
of that
these
sort.
are advertising signs that were just put up.
Okay.
But there's no advertising on them yet.
Correct. But my understanding is his plan was to have Parker River get any revenue from those ads. And he, he said in his email, he was gonna discuss it with city council and, I don't,
He's just premature. He just went out there and did it because he wanted to, but it's city property. So putting signs and starting a program for raising money for something on city property without talking to the city about it is just not the right way to go.
No bueno.
no. And I would like, my preference would be for the commission to basically write an official letter to the mayor, explaining this and asking to have the agreement nullified, because he's just not, he's just causing more damage than he's taking care of. And also in a couple of weeks, we're going to be meeting with what's that group's that company there, Julie, the land manager?
Oh, Land Stewardship Inc. Yes. We're meeting with them at the end of the month to talk about possibly helping the city out with just managing, overseeing, doing planning for our open space areas, including trails. And so it may be that they can take over some of this work that Jerry's doing if that's something that the city feels is necessary.
So I ran into Lise Reed the other day when they opened the new part of the rail trail. And I asked her about whether the Parks Department was going to take over the Gloria Brownhart bike trail. And she's more than willing to do it. Doesn't have the staff or the money, but it's not her decision to make. And according to her, there's been no further discussion of that happening. I don't know, Julia, maybe you know something that.
No, we haven't had any more meetings about it. I do think it's something that we should talk about. We have had one or two meetings about it, and it's been thrown out there. It is a staffing and funding thing, so maybe that's why it sort of stopped in its tracks, because it involves changing budgets and looking at staffing and things like that. But maybe we need to see what this Land Stewardship Inc. group thinks about what their abilities are, what kind of funding and resources Lisa would need to do that piece herself, and whether or not it just maybe it makes sense to let Jerry keep doing it. Who knows?
Well, it seems to me that if there's a question of jurisdiction here, who should be controlling this trail, and we've talked about that before, and maybe the thing to do is just to, I think as Joe was suggesting, send a letter to the mayor expressing what our concerns are, and I think it's probably her call.
Yeah, I feel more that way too.
And the other issue is with parks, that the trail would need to be added to the ordinance that specifies parks. That's another thing that their jurisdiction is all codified in an ordinance, so that it also needs to be added to that. And the reality is, most of the things in our jurisdiction, and he's not getting permits for it. He's just doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So we do have authority there with regards to enforcement. And this meeting with this group at the end of the month will coincide exactly with with his deadline to fix the mess he made. So it may all be good timing to basically give him a cease and desist and not allow him to do any more work out there.
But Joe, do you think we need to have some formal decision or make a formal request to the mayor?
I would like to. Julie, what do you think about that?
I think that's always a good idea. I think we need to keep her in the loop on all this stuff. I know she's busy, but this is something that the city has to make some decisions about. So she should at some level be involved.
Yeah, and he also ignored her telling him to not do any more work out there.
Yeah, and in the past, I feel like he's gone to her and gotten agreements for things and, without us knowing about it necessarily. And so we just all always need to be on the same page with this stuff, I think, because it is a little bit discombobulated, that we don't want things to start getting more confusing. So I think a letter, and then I think a meeting with everyone would be a good idea too, including Jerry.
I'm fine with that, but initially, I think the mayor's got to. I don't think she's going to be happy that he did this.
No.
After she told him not to do it, not to do anything out there. So.
Joe, I like the idea of the letter. I'm in favor of it. I say we go ahead. And then as far as Parks Department taking over maintenance, I mean, that's a whole separate issue, and I think they're stretched to their limits.
Yeah.
Their limits as it is anyway. So I don't hold a lot of hope out for that happening. But regardless, yeah, I'm in favor of the letter, and I think we should go forward.
Well, when I talked with Liz, she said she's including in her budget what she feels is everything she needs for staffing and to get the job done. So
Is she including that in her budget?
I don't know if she was including that or not.
Okay.
But I think she's looking for an increase in her budget and staffing.
Yeah.
Well, tell her to include it, because she's not going to get everything she asked for anyway. So she might as well put that in there, and that'll give them one thing they can cut away.
Right.
She might not get responsibility for it anyway. So.
And I think that's a good point. And I think that in terms of, I'm talking about keeping everybody on the same page, we haven't been keeping Lisa in the loop on what we were thinking about with this Land Stewardship Inc. group. So maybe we just need to invite her into that conversation as well.
I think that would be good.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be property in the city that they have responsibility for that they haven't really had a good opportunity to maintain properly, and they might want to get rid of some responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Joe, do you want to draft something or send me some bullets and I can put it on letterhead, and send it back for signage?
Okay. Why do we want to? Should we vote on sending something to her?
I'll make a motion that we send said letter to the mayor.
Second.
Roll call. Paul Healy.
Yes.
Steve Moore.
Yes.
Dan Warshall.
Yes.
David Vine.
My only hesitation here is this letter ending in us saying that we're recommending that you terminate this, because I'm not for that.
You're not for that?
I'm more in favor of laying out the situation.
Okay. Well,
Just like laying out our concerns, right?
our concerns. I mean, I don't. I'm just afraid we're going to end up in a. I guess it really doesn't matter. We don't have that much power on this anyway.
Yeah.
And what's going on out there as it is anyway isn't working. So I mean.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to be.
I vote yes. I vote yes. That was my concern. You've answered it.
All right. Rhonda Cola.
Yes.
Carol Wagon.
Yes.
I vote yes. All right, I'll throw something together. And it doesn't need to have that because I think she's going to be pretty pissed.
I actually don't mind the signs being there as long as they don't have any ads on them.
Well, yeah, no, same with me too. But
And know where the money's going.
If he's raising money for an adopt a trail program, we should know about our own Adopt a Trail program.
Yeah, on city property.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll do that. Do we have, we don't have anything else, do we?
I
We're
got
gonna-
two.
Yes, go ahead. Go.
At our last meeting, we talked about whether that 25% increase in square footage was cumulative. And I thought there was going to be some discussion of that today, or Jennifer Blanchard was going to come in and.
Yeah, we'll have to put that on the agenda for another meeting, and I can talk to those guys. I'll talk to Jennifer and Andy about doing that. I didn't put it on for this meeting because we had kind of a full agenda, and I figured, you know, save it, but it is something that we need to discuss. So the 6th, maybe, I'll ask Andy and Jennifer. It would be good to have both of them.
And the other thing is my favorite harbor master. Whether he's made any progress on the shed out there and getting it raised or whatever. If we could get a report from him.
Did we not close that out last year?
I thought he did raise it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last I knew, he didn't have any money to raise it.
I thought he got the
Maybe I'm
contractor
wrong,
out
but I don't
there.
think so.
Oh, we can look that up.
Yeah,
I thought we
yeah,
closed
I
that
thought it
out.
was done. Yeah.
Wasn't Reed's Ferry gonna come out and do all that work?
Yeah,
I
they
thought he
did.
didn't have the money to do it.
Oh,
I know.
I'll dig back out all the notes from last year and figure out what happened with that.
I
Okay.
know Gretchen knows.
Yeah.
Gretchen knows all.
I do.
Oh,
The last time I was out there, it still had the lattice around it.
Okay.
Which probably means it didn't get raised.
I don't think it
Okay.
did.
thank you, Gretchen.
Like the never ending problem. That
can we find him?
he has plenty of money, that's for sure. At least, I mean, the harbor master account
Maybe
usually
he used the
does.
money for the trail.
Anyway, I'll
Yeah.
have to-
All right.
Do we know if our next meeting is going to be live? Because I think all the restrictions expired today, and I don't know that the state government got it together to change the law. So I think we have to go back to. live
Yeah.
meetings.
I
For all
vote plead ignorance.
That's what we did tonight, basically, because yeah, as of last night, we were all supposed to go back to
No,
in-person
I think it's
meetings.
as of today, so we're still in compliance.
Oh, we are? Okay, because I talked to Lisa Mead yesterday and she said, she was asking what we were doing. And I said, well, we're having our meeting. And I said, I
think
was
they expired
assuming
today.
that okay, I thought it was midnight. And Lisa told me it was midnight last night. Do you think we're okay?
Well, I don't
I
know.
thought
but
they extended it to the fall, didn't they?
Trying to.
They would,
Yeah, there was legislation pending, or there was some, governor's action, but it didn't happen, as far as I know, but I don't know for sure. So I
It
just.
didn't happen. It didn't happen yet.
happened.
And could
It
be
happened
happening
today.
right now.
so Julia,
It's
if we
gonna
do have
depend-
to go back to in-person meetings and at the senior center, can we do it in the larger room downstairs instead of jamming into the director's room upstairs?
Yeah, wait, I'm wondering who we're hearing in the background talking.
I've been trying to say it's been,
Oh,
it
it's
was
Gretchen.
extended today 90 days.
It was extended, okay.
Oh, it was extended today. Oh, excellent. Okay,
All right.
great.
Well,
See,
never mind.
Thanks,
then I'll-
Gretchen.
Gretchen knows all.
Yeah.
I tried to say it.
We should
Now,
just
yes,
call.
I do.
Oh,
Forget the
good. I hadn't
meeting,
heard that.
really.
As of this morning, it wasn't done yet. That's such good news.
Yeah, there's a lot of other people who want it extended too.
Yeah, but we will have to come up with a way to do hybrid meetings eventually. And it's going to be a little complicated. We'll have to get some training and we'll probably be back at the senior center. My biggest concern was when we were trying to share the city council chambers with the city council, and we had our Tuesday nights always scheduled, we kept getting bumped and then we'd go upstairs and we'd get bumped from that room. And that's why we ended up at the senior center in the first place. Now they're talking about having everybody do their hybrid meetings at the senior center. And my response was, well, that just means we're gonna get bumped even more often than we did before.
It would be in the parking lot.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll figure it out, but this is great news that we get 90 more days.
Kick it down the road.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, you're killjoy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All righty.
Okay. Good night,
Night,
everybody.
everyone.
Fourth of July.
Right.
I'm gonna stop sharing.